The woman stares in horror at her coworker's face as the features dribble and sluice off of what was once his head. He hasn't been injected with acid or doused with some anomalous solution. All he's done is open the office curtains and let the sun in. She, along with everyone else at the office, steps away from the ray of light consuming her coworker. He's melting like a lit candle on fast forward, his screams turning to bubbling gurgles. The woman can scarcely believe what she's seeing, but she has to. It's the only way she can survive. What happens next is a blur. The sun passes overhead as light expands across the office floor. Everyone caught in the beams starts to spasm, racked by some unknowable feeling. At first, they seem sweaty and moist like wet clay. Then, the dribbling starts. Ice cream skin cascading over wet clothes, burbling down to a sodden puddle. Everyone else panics, but the woman thinks fast. Perhaps acting on some animal instinct, she ducks behind an adjoining wall, out of the rapidly advancing natural light. She dodges it by a fraction of a second, as so many of her coworkers are instantaneously dissolved. 20 minutes ago, she was filling in spreadsheets and preparing the quarterly earnings report for the company meeting. Now, most of the people attending that meeting are, as far as she knows, dead. She'll soon find out that the truth is so much worse, but there'll be time for that later. Nobody moves for an hour. The dead remain inert blobs of gelatinous goo on the ground, and the living hide, some weeping, some catatonic. The woman, in survival mode, is drinking it all in, trying to piece together the details and find some narrative in all of this. It's the sun. It's something to do with the sun. Or is it some kind of airborne agent? Or AI-driven nanovirus? She just doesn't have enough information to go off of. Little does she know, this is just one domino falling in a catastrophe of global proportions. In the White House, the government is debating tax reform, balancing the budget, and considering whether the Pentagon vending machines should stock Coke, Pepsi, or both. The president is signing bills when the light shifting through the Oval Office window seems to change somehow. He doesn't even notice it's happening until he sees something strange dripping onto the paper of the latest bill. Something about funding for some new interstate transport project. What's dripping onto the paper is his face. Struck by an incredible tiredness, the president leans forward and washes over the desk. Someone in the Secret Service might have sounded the alarm if any of them were still solid enough to do so. The same happens to countless other world leaders at the same time. Canada, Australia, Mexico, the whole Northern Hemisphere gets it at once. It's happening in the streets and supermarkets at the same time, where the light is destroying, transforming. The linoleum and the concrete outside become stained by once human blobs in equal measure. One particularly striking image is a pair of boots with clothes crumpled around them. In front of the boots sits a baby's stroller, empty, save for the stains. The light takes all in equal measure. Hikers become flesh-colored splatters on distant walkways. Window washers on their adjustable platforms stain the very windows they were trying to clean, as the liquid that was once the people on the other side washes up against them. Every person waiting to cross the road at the street corner soon finds their way draining into the gutter. Every freelancer stepping outside their homes to take in a lungful of fresh air between shifts soon find themselves soaking into the grass. People liquefy at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, drip through the grates in the floor of the Eiffel Tower walkways. Tourists melt on the Great Wall of China, lose physical form on the cobblestones of Moscow's Red Square, staring at the pyramids of Giza, sitting outside of cafes in Poland, and exploring the waterways of the Amazon rainforest. In distant, war-torn countries, combatants wielding AK-47s and grenades freeze up as the change seizes them. The guns and bombs fall from their hands as their hands become little more than wet slime, along with the rest of them. Within moments, the battle has become eerily quiet. Wet army fatigues lay in the mud, soaked with the goo that had once been their wearers. The world has achieved peace once and for all, at the most terrible of costs. We return to the woman, crouching, terrified, ignorant to the magnitude of the horror that's just laid across the world. That's when the broadcast starts. Every screen in the office changes, displaying some unfamiliar logo. A voice comes over the speakers, calling himself the Administrator. He works for a group called the SCP Foundation, the one group capable of stopping this, or so they claimed. The so-called Administrator told the remaining members of the office who still had bodily integrity what they knew so far. Sunlight had somehow become dangerous. Being exposed to it caused an instant and irrevocable transformation. Those exposed should be considered lost. The Administrator recommends waiting until night and then traveling to one of the addresses they recommend, an SCP Foundation containment site. It doesn't feel real. None of this feels real. The message just keeps playing on repeat until it all just feels like white noise to the woman. She can't afford to think about what could be the apocalypse. She's not worried about the world. She's not worried about the office. She's not even worrying about herself. No, she's worrying about her wife. She's halfway across the country on a business trip, some stupid wilderness retreat, 2,000 miles away. Did the sun get her like it got everybody else? No, that can't be. Her wife is too smart for that. She's got to be. As the survivors in her office huddle in the dark, the woman pulls out her phone and frantically scrolls through her contacts. One tortuously long dial later, she's through, and the voice of her wife washes over her like liquid silk. She's never been more relieved. When the chaos unfolded, she was in a hot yoga sauna tent, safely out of the sun's new and deadly glare. Plenty of others on the trip hadn't been so lucky, but they couldn't afford to worry about it now. When the change happened, they all received texts from the same SCP Foundation that had been broadcasting over the computers. One goal was clear amongst it all. They needed to reunite at the last gasp of the world. Maybe everything would be okay if they could. But how? They couldn't drive. Even if they set off at night, the roads were gridlocked, full of cars where their drivers had cooked in their seats. They couldn't fly. As soon as the chaos started unfolding, planes started falling from the sky, destroying buildings and population centers below as their pilots took on a liquid state. Inevitably, the internet would go out without anyone to maintain it. So too would the power, critical infrastructure, the rule of law, everything. In the space of a few hours, the whole world felt like it was melting. Perhaps they could find their ways to the nearest SCP Foundation containment site, but then they'd be so separate. No, it was better to be in danger together than safe alone. The woman hardened her resolve. Somehow, she would get back to her beloved, or she would die trying. Or worse. Before she hangs up the phone, she says, "Stay safe. Please. We'll meet at our special place and everything will be okay again." Fast forward a week. She's trekking across an abandoned highway, weaving between abandoned cars. It's a cold, moonless night, the only kind that's even remotely safe. The woman has seen terrible and impossible things in these prior few days. In some cases, even moonlight could kill. She couldn't risk it. That explains her current outfit. She planned it extensively, a mix of items she already owned and other parts she'd looted from stores along the way. On the bottom layer, she wore a full-body wetsuit with Under Armour layers on top of that. She wore a long, black rain slicker with thick boots and gloves. Over her head, a balaclava and a pair of mirrored shades. By her calculation, not a single speck of light could reach her skin. That's all it would take to destroy it all, and she wasn't about to let her wife down like that. Not while she still drew breath. Every day, there were new broadcasts from the mysterious SCP Foundation, reaching every machine that was still able to receive them. Each one seemed to take on a greater tone of desperation than the previous, all imploring her and the other civilians to make their way to the nearest containment site. But lately, they'd been providing stranger suggestions too. In the previous broadcast, they'd even recommended, in the absence of viable food, that civilians eat parts of the blobs that were once their fellow human beings, as long as the pieces are small enough to avoid choking. The woman thinks that she'd rather starve than lower herself to that, but who knows what desperation would drive her to. She hikes ceaselessly, the contents of her rucksack shaking. It felt so heavy when she first set off, but as the days passed, she got used to it. It's mostly survival gear, spare clothes, emergency layers, a bedroll, a tent she could set up if there wasn't any natural cover when the sun came up. There's plenty of energy drinks in there too. It's the best way to help her remain in command of her circadian rhythm. The alternative is becoming like one of those poor souls in the cars. As much as her instincts around respect and human dignity want her to avert her eyes, she can't help but look in and see the bloodless carnage. Lone drivers, sometimes whole families, all reduced to inert, melted slop inside their vehicles. They probably all thought they were on a normal road trip, or thinking about what they'll have for dinner after their commute. She shakes her head in disgust and keeps moving. She won't turn out like them. She can't turn out like them. The woman keeps walking, focused only on putting in as many miles as she can before having to find a place inside to hide before daylight. It's funny. Once upon a time, she'd been so scared of the dark. Now, it's one of the only times she feels remotely safe. That is, until she hears something shifting behind her. Without thinking, she turns and sees dark shapes moving in the cars she just walked past. Were people sleeping in there? Animals, perhaps? No, the truth is far, far worse than that. The woman soon realizes that she's seeing the blobs themselves moving inside the cars. Wait, does this mean they aren't even dead? She watches, frozen in horror from the implications of everything she's seeing. The blobs rise up, smashing themselves up against the windows of their cars until the glass cracks and then gives way entirely. She sees the blobs slithering out of the cars and ambulating down onto the ground, leaving wet trails like giant, grotesque slugs. Then, they begin to talk. One of the blobs, the closest one to her, hisses and gurgles words that sound eerily like those of an innocent little boy with an edge of terrible madness as it begins wriggling slowly in her direction.
Hey, are you my mommy? Ha ha! Look, mommy's trying to run away from us. Doesn't she look so funny? You look sick, mommy. You look so pale. We need to help you get some sun, mommy.
The gelatinous creature lunges for the woman, several tendril-like pseudopods reaching out of its fleshy mass to embrace her. Her reflexes save her in the nick of time, but the beast doesn't let up after that. It keeps slithering, keeps grabbing. It's like something out of her worst nightmare. She drops her backpack to the ground, but it only weigh her down and get her killed, and runs for her life as the monsters chase her. For creatures without legs, they move with such nightmarish speed. All she can do is sprint until her lungs burn, until it feels like her muscles are pumping razor blades, but the alternative is more awful than she can even imagine. As she runs, more of the monsters in the cars wake up, the blobs that had once been the grand majority of the human race, and they wanted the remaining survivors to join them in their new, terrible fate. The woman manages to lose them, only just, but she hears their gibbering madness ring out into the night behind her.
We'll find you, mommy. We'll find you, and we'll help you see the light.
Dark months pass in a cold, cruel world. The woman can never stop moving. The second you stop moving, you die. Those things, the blobs, the formerly human monsters, were so much smarter than she'd first thought. They're single-minded creatures, living to hunt down unchanged humans and drag them into the light. At night, she sleeps in closets, a place where she thought she'd never return to. It's murder on her back, sleeping semi-upright, but those who sleep unsecured don't survive for long. She hears them screaming in the night sometimes, when the fleshy tendrils take hold of them and drag them out. Better them than her, she thinks. These months have made her crueler than she ever remembered being. Maybe that's what's required in the new world just to get by. She passes from town to town, city to city. The miles melt away beneath her booted feet. Her wife is out there somewhere. She'll do anything she can to get to her, no matter how many terrible horrors she sees. One night, she witnesses something so much worse than she'd ever seen before. She was sleeping on one of the upper floors of the high-rise when the ground beneath her started rumbling. She woke up immediately, terrified that, for some reason, the building itself was going to collapse around her. She ran out of the closet she was hiding in and looked out of the window onto the dark street below. An immense shape was moving, a giant blob, so big it would dwarf a city bus. Even in the dark, she can see the parts, the arms, the legs, the faces, both human and animal. It's an amalgamation, some twisted hybrid of hundreds, if not thousands, of those corrupted beings. They're joining together, she thinks, her brain injected with a sudden rush of pure horror. They're becoming superorganisms, and they're still hunting. They won't stop until they have everyone. Flash forward again. She's been traveling for so many months when she reaches the place where they agreed to meet. Her wife. She hadn't been replying to calls or texts, but perhaps that's because the whole networks are down. It's so hard to tell anymore. In most places, not even any electricity works. But that doesn't matter. She keeps walking. It's an old movie theater. They were here so many years ago, back when they first met and saw their first movie, The Handmaiden, directed by Park Chan-wook. So many happy memories. And wouldn't the darkness of the movie theater be the perfect place to avoid the sun? She creeps down the hall, looking for screen 3, the screen they'd agreed on, their special screen. The woman wears a mad grin of anticipation on her face, her sanity bearing the weight of all the terrible things she's seen. She opens the door and sees her, the thing that had once been her wife.
Honey, I'm so glad you're here,
she says, in a low, wet voice. SCP-001 is the ultimate nightmare situation, codenamed When Day Breaks, an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario, irreparably altering the state of things and throwing not only the human race, but all of life on Earth into seemingly irreparable disarray. For unknown reasons, the sun became an anomalous force overnight. Its rays went from givers of life and warmth to agents of destruction. Any contact with the light, no matter how minor, and sometimes even reflected off of other figures like the moon, will cause those in contact to take on a gelatinous state. As I mentioned earlier, this doesn't just apply to human beings, or even other forms of anomalous life. For the most part, the effects of SCP-001 seem to cancel out any previous anomalous effects, as it reduces humans and anomalies alike to nightmarish blobs of unknowable flesh. But as you've already seen, it doesn't stop there. Not only are the bodies of these victims warped, the effect extends to their minds. While the Foundation was initially counting victims of the 001 phenomenon as dead, they were sadly very much alive, and they seek to induce their effects on others. The blobs hunt down unaffected people and try to drag them into the sunlight, at which point their secondary mission will become clear: total assimilation. Out in the scorched wasteland that was once the Earth you and I knew, these blobs seek each other and coagulate into larger beings, comprised of people and animals by the thousand in some cases. These titanic entities methodically move through the remaining shaded settlements, hoping to add more converts to their terrible biomass. While these creatures can be theoretically harmed, killing them has proved incredibly difficult. In many cases, just escaping them has proved to be a better use of resources. But they don't sleep. They never sleep. As the few remaining humans rest, they just keep hunting, as they will keep doing until the rest of humanity is just like them. There is no way of truly containing SCP-001 when day breaks, giving it the rare APOLLYON Class. When the chaos and horror first unfolded, billions were changed in an instant, forcing the SCP Foundation to go public if they were to have any help of saving the human race. In the early days of the horrors, the administrator of the SCP Foundation released a message to the world, the first time the organization had ever broken its veil of secrecy.
To those of you with families, or God forbid, children, I am deeply, deeply sorry. You must push on. Do not let their deaths be in vain. We do still have time. Humanity may still have a future. Come to Site 19. We need all the hands we can get. Learn to embrace the darkness, friends. Fear the light.
And fear the light they did. We all fear it now. Beacons were sent out to lead people to the secure containment facilities, but so few actually made it there. So many members of Foundation personnel died, or worse, were changed, as they tried to assist in rescue efforts. It was once said that Foundation operatives die in the dark so that the human race can live in the light. After the When Day Breaks scenario, it's the other way around. Foundation operatives die in the light so that the remaining sad vestiges of humanity can live in the dark. Whether that's a life worth living, dear viewer, is up to you. If you'll excuse me, I think I hear something slithering up against the door outside. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-5150, Anomalous Dental Office.